hello, people of Earth, and hello, Murray Griffin. How are you doing today?
Hello, Francisca Curran. So, Francisca, it's been another big week in nature, climate and sustainability around Australia. What in particular caught your eye this week?
Well, Murray, this morning on my morning stroll, I got my email notification come up from the Earth Weekly newsletter, and I conveniently clicked through, and a number of things caught my eye. But one that really does stand out and reflects my love of data is that the Australian Bureau of Statistics with CSIRO and the Federal Environment Department has once again released Australia's national ecosystem accounts. And so these are the accounts that put a value on the environmental services that nature provides to the economy. So this includes data like how much carbon is stored that would otherwise have been released and is stored by nature, and how much feed for grazing livestock does nature provide.
It does seem a really broad set of data that they brought together. I mean, what were some of the numbers that sort of stood out for you?
Some of the numbers were pretty massive. So the accounts estimate that in FY22, the environment or nature stored $59.5 billion worth of carbon in grasslands, native forests, savannas and mangroves.
Wow.
There were other statistics. Yeah, I know that's huge considering that's a pretty important activity to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just doing it for us,
Yep.
Thank you. And another statistic that it published was around the protection that nature does around major coastal inundation events, and that nature provided storm and tidal surge protection to 104,000 dwellings and 207,000 residents.
Yeah, I thought that was amazing because I'd never even thought of that as an ecosystem service, that, this these bands of vegetation between houses and the sea, that you can put a value on that service in terms of stopping flooding or stopping erosion, I guess.
Yeah. That's right. And we would pay really good money to have that done, and nature's doing it for us. And one last one, Murray, is the tons of wild fish caught are also considered a service or product that nature provides us. And the total tons in that year were 161,000 tons of wild fish.
Which is indeed a lot of fish.
It is indeed. Murray, what stood out for you this week in the world of climate and environment news?
Okay, so when I tell you this, you'll probably think, oh, that sounds really boring. But the development that I was most interested in this week...
Sorry, I'm not going to think it's boring. I just told you about a data dump.
Yes, I know. Although I did once see an ABS cover on an ABS publication which said, "Data is so hot right now," which I thought was...
I need that on a T-shirt.
I know. I thought it would make a great T-shirt as well. Anyway, so, the reason I'm saying, my selected item might sound really boring is that it's a memorandum of understanding, or an MOU for short. Now, usually these are a real snore, but this particular MOU is between Federal Environment Minister Murray Watt and Western Australia's Premier Roger Cook. And in it, the two politicians commit to completing work this year on an agreement that would let Western Australia assess environmental projects on behalf of the federal government, in line with the reformed federal environment law, which is known as the EPBC Act. And then next year, and this is the sort of big ticket item that I think is of interest, they would start work on an agreement that would let Western Australia issue EPBC environmental approvals on behalf of the federal government. Which
is really interesting, Murray.
It is, because there's currently no state or territory environmental approval bilateral. Well, so it's sort of so far so good, but the MOU says the approvals agreement will reference a Western Australian scheme that's supposed to mean that big projects, especially big iron ore projects, offset the environmental damage they cause. And the scheme is known as the Pilbara Environmental Offsets Fund. But the problem is its track record has been really bad. The fund has paid for hardly any nature protection projects. So for people who know about climate laws and policies and not so much about nature law and policy, the Pilbara Fund is a bit like the sort of unreformed first version of the safeguard scheme, where you sort of look at it and think, what does this even do? It's that bad. Anyway, it'll be interesting. Yeah. It'll be. I think this is going to be a real test for the EPBC reforms, because there will be a national environmental standard, I think, on environmental offsets. And it will be interesting if WA has to lift its game in terms of that offset scheme, the Pilbara offset scheme, in order to get an approvals agreement approved, basically, by the federal government.
That is really interesting, Murray, even if it is just an MOU.
Yeah, I know.
How is this being received so far? Or is it early days?
Well, it's very early days. So the announcement was only made a few days ago. And also the assessment bilateral is the first cab off the rank. And the other thing is that we haven't yet seen the national standard on environmental offsets, and that will presumably shape what happens in terms of doing something about the Pilbara Environmental Offsets Fund.
Interesting.
Indeed. So, we've probably bored people completely talking about statistics and a memorandum of understanding. But for those of you who are hanging in there, we have a quiz question for you.
We do.
And today's quiz question is, which Tasmanian native plant that was once thought extinct will benefit from a new Tasmanian government conservation grant? Is it Shy Susan? Is it Bold Bridget, or is it Bashful Stephen? So stay tuned to find out.
Do you think people can tell that you made this one up, Murray?
I don't know.
They sound like totally legit species.
They all do, don't they? They all do.
Alrighty, let's jump in. First up, in New South Wales, the state's EPA has released new waste and recycling data, which shows that the state generated 22.4 million tonnes of waste in the 2025 financial year, which is up 5% from the previous year. The increase was mainly driven by a 7% increase in the generation of construction and demolition waste. The data also shows that in the 2025 financial year, New South Wales recycled 67% of its waste, up 1% on the previous year.
And staying on waste, the New South Wales EPA has awarded grants totalling $2.3 million to councils for projects that tackle problem wastes. The funded projects include a project by Liverpool City Council and the University of New South Wales that will pioneer a process that can turn shredded mattresses into carbon that will be used to make green ceramic pavers. Other funded projects include a trial of new technology that will be fitted to waste trucks and will scan bins for the presence of batteries before collection. And Francisca, I don't know, I was wondering when I heard about that mattress project, which sounds pretty extraordinary. Do you reckon that sort of firmer mattresses are going to make better pavers? Are they going to say, I'm sorry, that mattress is too soft, we're not using that?
Too soft for green ceramic pavers. I suppose, what if we need softer ceramic pavers? Maybe there are applications where, and maybe that's good for like cars and for impact, maybe that's good for playgrounds. Maybe soft mattresses are the way to go.
Indeed. I did try and do a bit of research before we started recording, and apparently what they do is that they mix the shredded mattresses with glass and then they put it through a pyrolyzer. Now, I don't know, I sort of know what a pyrolyzer is. I think it's combustion in the absence of oxygen. So anyway, we are looking forward to getting some pavers made of old mattresses mixed in with glass, and which
better
is how
than
they
having
make it.
Mattresses made of ceramic and glass.
Yeah, indeed. So, and also that other project sounds really interesting as well. If waste collection trucks can scan bins for batteries before they dump the contents into the truck, that would be a really big advance as well.
Yeah, I'm also like, that question of have we given up on helping people to separate batteries and other waste that can't go in your general waste? Like, this should be a last catch, right? Not a...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there is a battery recycling scheme. There's currently one that's not, I think, basically not that great, but there's plans to develop a mandatory
battery recycling.
Yes. But then the trucks would be the sort of last chance pickup. Yeah.
What a wasteful episode.
Indeed.
There's also some waste news from Western Australia. The Western Australia and federal governments have jointly awarded an $8 million Recycling Modernisation Fund grant to Regroup to upgrade infrastructure at its Canning Vale materials recovery facility. The new equipment will boost WA's capacity to process waste paper and cardboard to meet national waste export requirements already in place. And the upgrade also means it'll be able to meet stricter conditions that will apply to waste paper intended for export and which start on July the 1st. The new conditions state that exported waste must have no more than 5% total contamination by weight.
There's some big finance news this week. Australia's new $5 billion net zero fund is open for business and is now accepting funding applications. The fund will support investment in manufacturing and energy efficiency upgrades in industries that find it hard to reduce their carbon emissions. And it will also support the manufacture of low emissions technologies and the production of low carbon liquid fuels like biofuels. Funding can take the form of a discount loan, or the net zero fund might take a small stake in a business, or it might provide a financial guarantee, so other private lenders feel more confident about lending to a decarbonisation project or business.
In other finance news, the Australian Renewable Energy Group, known as ARENA, has awarded a $38 million grant to lithium company PLS Group. PLS will use the funding to help support a trial of Calax Limited's electric kiln technology for the lithium industry. The Calax technology has the potential to cut emissions from calcination, which is one of the most energy-intensive steps in lithium processing, by more than 80%. And that Calax kiln technology is an Australian success story. It was first developed in regional Victoria, and it's attracted international interest from companies in a range of industries, including cement making, steel, and alumina.
Yep. And it's actually headquartered in Horsham in regional Victoria, which was once famous for growing apples. I don't know if it still is. Meanwhile,
How do you know that? That's fantastic.
I used to live in regional Victoria, and we used to do trips to Melbourne, and we would stop off in Horsham.
And for some apples.
When I was a kid, for apples and fish and chips.
Fantastic.
Yes. Meanwhile, the Australian Renewable Energy Agency has also awarded $11 million to two First Nations-led microgrid projects in the Northern Territory, which will demonstrate how solar and batteries can deliver cleaner, more reliable electricity to remote off-grid communities. And it's been a really big week for the Australian Renewable Energy Agency because it's also announced grants totaling $4.3 million for two battery businesses, Power Plus and in Victoria, and Firebird Metals in Western Australia. Who knows, maybe those companies will become Australia-based international success stories, just like Calax.
Sticking with the innovation theme, and environmental assessment documentation for the Port Hedland Green Steel project is now available. The $4.3 billion project aims to be the first commercial-scale, new, low-emissions iron-producing facility built in Australia. The project is being developed in Western Australia by Korea-based POSCO in partnership with Marubeni and Taiwan's China Steel Corporation.
And in other big infrastructure news, environmental assessment documentation is now available for INPEX's Bonaparte carbon capture and storage project. The project could sequester up to 8 million tonnes of CO2 annually.
Which is huge. So anyone interested in environmental assessment documentation, there's some big things happening at the moment.
Yes, indeed.
Staying with infrastructure, and the federal government has given environmental approval for the Northwest Transmission Developments project in Tasmania, which will be the first step in the construction of the Project Marinus interconnector. Project Marinus will strengthen the grid link between Tasmania and Victoria.
The Queensland Government is pushing hard to develop the onshore Taroom Trough oil basin, located in the state's southwest. And in its latest move, it's given the state's Coordinator General new powers to prepare a development plan for Taroom's oil and gas resources. According to the state government, the plan will provide a strategic whole-of-basin framework to enable the orderly, efficient and responsible development of oil and gas resources within the Taroom Trough. There's a couple of things worth noting about the Taroom Trough. In particular, it would be a high-risk, very expensive project. There is oil there. That's been known for quite a few years, but it's in rock that is 3 to 4 kilometres underground, and the rock would have to be fracked to obtain the oil, which would require a lot of water.
In other Queensland news, the state government has launched a $1.75 million grain sediment reduction program, offering grain growers in the central Queensland highlands and the Isaac and Dawson River valleys grants of up to $100,000. Eligible growers can access funding to minimise soil loss, increase ground cover, and prevent fine sediment from entering local waterways. The program aims to reduce the amount of sediment-contaminated runoff entering waters of the Great Barrier Reef.
The New South Wales Net Zero Commission has released a heat stress spotlight report. The report says extreme heat is Australia's deadliest disaster. And when I read that, I was completely amazed. But it says that between 2000 and 2018, extreme heat caused more deaths in Australia than all other natural hazards combined. But the fact that extreme heat is the root cause of these deaths often goes unnoticed because the deaths are just attributed to cardiac problems, kidney problems, or lung problems without looking at the heat trigger that lies behind those events, those health events. The report also says that every 1 degree increase in maximum temperatures in summer results in at least a 20% increase in emergency department visits. The report calls for the introduction of a coordinated seasonal heat response plan for the summer months, and it says the thermal performance of housing for poor and vulnerable communities needs to be improved.
I thought that statistic was staggering. The 1 degree increase in maximum temperature in summer results in 20% increase in emergency department visits. Is just a very important issue to shed some light on.
Yes, and this is apparently one of a series of spotlight reports that the Net Zero Commission is going to do. So it'll be very interesting to see what else they focus on.
On a positive note on that one, the report does say that it is one of the most, or it is the most preventable and under-recognised disaster type. So, clearly there are things that can be done, like you've mentioned, they're calling for the seasonal heat response plan and for improved thermal performance of housing, amongst other measures. So there are things we can do about it, is, I guess, my takeaway message.
Yeah, that's the upside of it.
The New South Wales government has welcomed a Land and Environment Court decision fining 2 landholders for illegally clearing native vegetation in Western New South Wales. The court found John and Raylene Vassallo guilty of multiple offences of unlawful clearing under the Local Land Services Act 2013 at a property around 120 kilometres from Cobar. The court fined them a total of more than $430,000 and ordered the defendants to pay the government's legal costs. The offences involved clearing about 2,398 hectares of native vegetation between 2021 and 2024, including a large number of mature trees and important habitat such as tree hollows.
Last year, Turkey and Australia were rivals, but this year they're partners. It might sound like the plotline of an HBO miniseries, but it's actually international climate diplomacy, because after competing to host this year's COP31 climate talks, the 2 countries have cut a deal. Turkey will be COP president and host, and Australia will have the new role of president of the negotiations. But how much do we know about how Turkey is likely to handle its new role? In a new episode of our other podcast, Track Changes, Franziska and I talked to an expert on Turkey's approach to climate change, Gizem Koç of Client Earth. It's a great episode, so check it out. The federal and Victorian governments have launched the Victorian Renewable Energy TAFE Centre of Excellence at TAFE's Morwell campus in the Latrobe Valley. Other similar TAFE centres are in operation or are being established across Australia, including in New South Wales, Queensland, Western Australia, Tasmania and the ACT. The Victorian Centre will differ slightly in that it will focus more strongly on smart grids, energy networks and home electrification. In other renewable news, renewable energy company Acciona is progressing projects in New South Wales and Victoria. In New South Wales, the state government has placed on exhibition Acciona's environmental impact statement for its proposed 236 megawatt Wallaby Creek wind farm to be located near Narromine. And the Victorian government is inviting comments on what it expects to see in the proposed environmental effect statement for Acciona's proposed 360 megawatt tall tree wind farm in Victoria's Golden Plains Shire.
That's a great name, tall tree farm.
It is, yeah.
And here's the answer to our quiz question. Okay, so in Tasmania, 6 conservation projects have received grants totaling more than $600,000 under Round 2 of Tasmania's Threatened Species Partnership Grant Program. The grants included funding to better protect one of Tasmania's rarest plants, the pink flowering herbaceous shrub known as Shy Susan. Shy Susan's pink flowers are too small for the introduced honeybee to enter, and only the beating wings of native bees can vibrate the flowers at the right frequency to release their pollen. The plant is so endangered that it was thought to be extinct until 1986, when a small population was rediscovered. Important conservation work for the plant has already been carried out by NRM North in Tasmania. And you can actually buy Shy Susan wines made from Tasmanian grapes, although none of the money that you spend on the wine will go to conservation of the plant. The wine company with the Shy Susan range says the survival of the wildflower depends completely on a little native bee, who alone is capable of pollination. Their fate is forever entwined.
Isn't that beautiful?
Isn't that picture?
Isn't that a lovely sentiment? Yes. So cheers to the Shy Susan shrub.
I just love the image of a tiny little bee.
I know. It's a great story, isn't it?
Right frequency. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
a
fantastic.
Good story. I'll have to. Yeah.
Finally, congratulations to Adelaide University student Shannon Evenden, who is also a very entertaining science communicator who has had her own show on Radio Adelaide. Shannon has just won the prestigious Catherine Helen Spence Scholarship to investigate the barriers that are preventing greater participation by South Australian farmers in revegetation projects. As part of the project, Shannon will also spend time at the Stockholm Resilience Centre in Sweden, a global leader in the interactions between people and nature.
That's it for today. 2 more people are crucial to making this podcast happen: Sophie Sideris and the co-founder of the Earth News Service, Chris Danzy. To find out more about what we talked about today, check out the Earth newsletter at earth.au. And if you enjoyed this pod, there's something we'd like you to do for us. Please share it with a friend, a colleague, or your network so they get to hear about it too. And give us some stars on your pod listening platform. When Spotify and Apple see stars, they're more likely to put our pod in front of other people. Thank you, and see you next week.
See you next Tuesday.